But
And then I have this other completely silly question. Not silly, but it'll come out of left field. So, but since you might be able to explain this to me. So, the Gospel of Mark, which is see, you didn't see this one coming, did you,
I
Julie?
did
no, I
not.
didn't. Go
I
ahead.
know
Go
nothing
ahead.
about the Gospel
The
of Mark
Gospel
except
of
what my mom
Mark,
said.
which I believe is the biblical scholars who do text analysis think it's the earliest one. I think that's right. There's a biblical scholar I follow on YouTube whom I love. I think he's fantastic. And someone asked him what his favorite gospel was, and he said it was Mark. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to reread that." So I read it, and so I want to ask you about this little episode in Mark where he talks about, I guess Jesus has been grabbed by the Romans, and he's somewhere in that process.
Hmm.
And some guy shows up in Jerusalem wearing just a lion cloth. And Mark, does that ring a bell? And Mark just spends like maybe 2 verses on him. And he shows up alongside whatever the procession is. And he's got the lion cloth. And then he takes off the lion cloth and runs away.
There's a
And I read,
streaker?
well, it's kind of like he's a streaker. And I read that and I went, well, what the hell is this? What's this supposed to mean? And I've actually tried to Google that a couple of times. I mean, he seems like he's perhaps a trickster of some
Sounds
type.
like it.
That's fascinating. So that has never come up.
Well,
Never come up in my studies, but I'm going to now have to go look for it.
I'm gonna
Of course,
see.
there's
Well,
a lot of midrash, even among the Christian stories, like Jesus descending into hell to save the souls, that it doesn't end up in the canonical writings, but it's fun, or the Gnostic Gospels. Some of my favorite passages are from the Gnostic Gospels.
yes,
But the man in the, did you say loincloth or
I think a
loincloth?
loincloth. Yes.
Loincloth. I love it.
I think he's a time traveler. I think like if you were a time traveler and you went back to Jesus' time, you'd be like, I'm gonna make it into the Bible by doing something really crazy.
Okay, so I
That
just
would
looked it
explain
up.
a
I
lot.
just Googled it. It's Mark 14:13. Who is the naked man in Mark's gospel? And I'm not going to read the whole article because I want to return to our conversation. But that the one theory that I could see as I was glancing at it is that some people think it's almost like a self-portrait of Mark himself.
Oh.
Okay.
Isn't that, it's kind of interesting. So
It
anyway, there you
is.
go.
It
Like he
is. Oh,
inserts himself as
Like
like
he's inserted himself as this kind of odd little observer.
I
yeah.
love it. Sort of like Alfred Hitchcock showing up in
Yes,
his movie,
yes.
little cameo appearance.
He makes a little cameo appearance.
That's a trickster
Oh,
thing to do. Maybe
It
Mark
is
is the
it
trickster.
is a trickster thing.
that, yes, good. So we're back to the trickster. I
Yeah,
think that's
right.
important. Yeah. Wow.
Well, what do you think the trickster can do? I'm really noticing lately all these thoughts I'm having about how we're moving in the time of history from sort of the great man model. And by
Mhm.
great man, I mean like great person, but it's
Yeah.
largely been men. This
Mhm.
model of like, oh, this person's so amazing. This like it's idealizing a person and then saying that this
Right.
person is going to save us and
Right.
not recognizing what it takes a village to save us. Um,
Mhm.
and transformation or cultural transformation is a community project. And I feel like we're moving from the great, because of the internet, we're moving and AI, we're moving from this great man model to a more community-based model, like a
Mm.
village model. And I wonder if we're going to move from like a nation state model to a small
Mm.
village model. But in any case, I feel like the trickster or the jester has a deep role in that transition to sort of point out the silliness of any one person.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting, Julia, because just this morning I was rewriting some of the copy on my website for my counseling services. And on the the page that describes how I work with people and their dreams to uncover more of the hidden self in order to integrate more of your personalities. I said the problem of the times we're living in right now is that there is so much perceived deconstruction of the cultural ethos that supported us that the ego is very frightened. And what happens when the ego is frightened is that it projects both the authority, the big man, as you call it, and looks for authority figures. It also projects the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the simultaneous splitting of the best and the worst.
So I'm not responsible and I'm also not the bad guy. I'm
Right. Right. I'm not going to, I can't be big enough to handle the fear that I'm experiencing. So I really need a big, strong hero authority figure. But I can't be the person who's responsible for all of the wickedness. There must be somebody that I can blame for how wretched and frightened I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, that I put that in the copy. This is the splitting. And if you're experiencing any of that, don't be alarmed. This is quite natural when a culture is disintegrating. But what the important thing for the individual to do is to go in